Welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, brought to you by IOTSA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. I'm Brian Sherman, Contact Director for IOTSA and host of our weekly discussions. My special guest today is Neal Bradbury, Vice President of MSP Strategic Partnerships at Barracuda MSP. We'll be discussing the escalating cybersecurity challenges of the transforming workplace today. So welcome back to Secure Connections podcast, Neal.
Thanks, Brian. Pleasure to be here. What a title we're going to discuss today. This is going to be a riveting topic. I'm excited.
Yeah, it is a riveting topic. And it's an important one. That's the key point.
It is.
I've seen so many people struggling with this, not just from the business side, but even from the MSP side. Just continuing to watch things evolve and putting new tools in place. And it's great. But anyway, it's great to see you. It's even if it's in a virtual environment. I know it's been a while since we've had a chance to chat, and hopefully sometime later this year, maybe we'll actually get to see each other live. That'd be exciting.
I look forward to that.
Fantastic. So what have you been doing to pass the time during the pandemic?
Well, I think, this remote work thing, Brian, you and I can attest, we've been doing this. This is now cool. I think you and I have been doing this remote stuff for a while. But the great thing for me is, everyone at work now realizes what it's like to be remote. And so they communicate better. There's some better follow-up emails. So from a work perspective, we're all doing okay. But from a personal perspective, just trying to keep 3 kids busy while we're all in a house, and stuff's starting to open up, which is great. And kids are going to school, and my house has never looked better with the sheer amount of home improvement projects that I've now had time to do on the honey-do list. But other than that, we're looking forward to stuff opening up as we go through the year.
That's awesome. I'm glad everybody's doing well. But yeah, I know you're probably competing for the bandwidth quite a bit with the kids, though, on school days. So
absolutely.
We appreciate you stopping by. If things lock up a little bit, just be patient. We'll get through it. It'll be good. But so, what are you most looking forward to doing when the pandemic wanes?
I just want to travel to warmer weather. Vacations last year were totally kind of gobbled up. We did stuff, we went outside, right? But the family does like to go away, and, looking forward to hopefully getting a vacation in there and just seeing some warmer weather in the coming year. So kids are, and obviously the whole family, we're just looking to get out, if that makes any sense, and get on the road.
Yeah. So driving trip, not necessarily a flying trip?
We might fly. I think we're going to do it. By then, vaccines, and we'll be out, and it's pretty safe. But so we'll see. Have an airplane ticket and an ID, and we'll travel.
Well, good. Hey, that's optimistic side of things. Is everybody's looking forward now instead of just what will tomorrow bring kind of thing. So it's great. So now that's a perfect place to kind of tie in, and you alluded to is how has the pandemic affected the Barracuda team's work environment? Have you physical offices, hybrid, everybody working from home? What's the scoop?
Yeah, we're hybrid, and for us, it really depends on the department, right? For a lot of what we do, we can do remote. So I would say if you were to do it by numbers, the majority of the teams globally are remote, but we still have manufacturing facilities, and we still got to get appliances out to those customers that need them. To protect on the security side. So those folks have been working tirelessly through the entire pandemic in a safe way, following all the rules that need to be done, and even going above and beyond those. So we're starting to see some of our offices open, which is great. And those employees that want to go in and work in an office, as the office and as the local municipalities and kind of regulations allow, they can get in there. So it's been nice. Obviously Barracuda's done the best that they can, and in the situation that kind of everyone was dealt. But there's nothing like a in-person meeting, and I think a lot of employees are just looking forward to the days where we can actually all get together again and do an all hands on in a big room versus actually do it over a Zoom.
So will they return to the office, or do you think it'll be a mixed bag?
I think I'll be mixed. I'll probably get in trouble now, but no, I think it's going to be mixed if I had to see the future. And I think a lot of companies, including us, will have to work through what does that look like? Because I think a lot of people that never worked remote have now worked remote and like it. and some people that have working remote now don't like it. And so I think we're going to have to see kind of what employees would like to do.
What'll be the interesting part, I think, as we head out of this is employee choice. Is will they, choose? You've got employees that are not happy with whatever the decision is that their employer makes. Will they want to go elsewhere? Because A, they either really liked it, or B, they really didn't like it.
Correct. Yeah, no, totally. I think a lot of people were very happy, and this isn't Barracuda, I'm just talking industry wide, people were happy to have jobs through it. And, the grass isn't always greener, but I think it'd be interesting to see what happens this year, if people do look for other opportunities, based on certain decisions that employers make. And again, employers have to make the best decision to keep their business, operational and profitable, or whatever targets they need to hit. So.
Yeah. I talked to actually a vendor in the channel earlier this week, and he was saying, you know what, our lease expired and they didn't renew it. Yeah. They had 50 people in a building, and those 50 people they said, we'll probably pick up some smaller space for meetings and maybe hybrid for those that, A, don't have internet access to good internet access, because that can be a problem. And then the other part is, for meetings and things like that, because they're all pretty much in the same area, but they're like, we don't need the building anymore. So that's kind of cool, but as long as everybody's happy.
Can you really make everyone happy though? Everyone does. We really do our best. We do our best.
I make myself happy. Yeah. Like looking at my schedule is like, what am I thinking? Yeah, it's no, you're right. So remote work, as we're talking about, is here to stay, at least for a lot of people, and MSPs obviously have to deal with that a lot. But SMBs and MSPs were able to put some stopgaps in many cases to accommodate remote work last year. But now, with more permanency behind it, how do you see that impacting providers and their customers? What's the kind of next steps?
Sure. Like I think there's probably 4 larger themes, and I'll mention them, and then we'll kind of I'll go through each one, and we can kind of tackle them. But digital transformation, and it's a buzzword, and I'll go into like what it means to Neal, right? Was a theme for over the last 12 months. Bring your own device, which the security community is. I've been involved with CompTIA for many years. We've always talked BYOD, and that is a theme that's really come up in the last 12 or more months. VPNs. How did all these businesses go and remote connect to infrastructure, regardless of where it was located or where that employee was located? And then either, depending how you look at it, users are either your weakest link or your greatest asset. I think they're both, depends on the context. And so, those 4 themes have really charted a course, I guess, for how MSPs, I think, have to move forward and how they made it through the pandemic. On the digital transformation side, a lot of businesses had plans to do more digital, right? Get rid of paper, put more stuff in the cloud. They were going to do it. They really wanted to do it. And maybe there was a budgeting issue, or they just didn't have time to do it. And the pandemic basically said, you know what, every one of your employees just went remote. There's no time like the present. Nobody can actually do their job. And so I think it did accelerate a lot of these digital transformation projects. And I don't care what size company you're in, 2 people, 2,000 people, 20,000 people. We needed to make sure that people were productive and getting their job done. Even Barracuda did a few, digital transformation projects, which I was even involved in, which, made us more scalable, more resilient, and made us a stronger company as a result. And so I think that is a theme that you'll see with a lot of MSPs. BYOD, as you think of now this digital transformation, how do you allow these users to access all this great new stuff that you just implemented? And so on the BYOD front, you had, when everyone first went remote, it was like their computers are their home computers, and they're on the same networks as the kid's Xbox. Like, what does that really mean? And then you segue now into the VPNs. We're going to open up a connection to the infrastructure. It's now open. You've extended the corporate network to your home network with the kid's Xbox, and there's risk there on this VPN, right? How is this remote technology going to work? I don't know about you, but I have a mobile device for my phone, right? I don't care whether you're Apple or Android. You want to connect. What does that mean? How do you connect to a company asset from that? And so the last is users. And then, we can pick apart each one of these, Brian, but in more detail, but, and then the last one is users. We do a security awareness training, you do phishing simulations, but a lot of users, if you look at a lot of the security threats for a lot of the challenges over the past year, right, 90% are still email, which is still phishing related. It's still someone clicking a link. It's still, account takeover requests, and they're getting access to a network and they're doing stuff. So MSPs, I think, have really got a difficult job as they look ahead. They got everything stable. They did what they needed to do for the pandemic, for their own businesses and for their businesses, for the businesses that they support. And now these four themes and these four challenges or changes that have accelerated are really going to define kind of what they do in the next 12 months for their customers and for themselves.
Yeah, no, that's very good points. So if I go back to digital transformation, for instance, we always think about that as the cloud, moving from regular standard applications to the cloud. What are the areas for cybersecurity concerns as they're going to the cloud? I know you mentioned email, and that one we know well, even though it's still the hardest to control. But I'm thinking things like hosted VoIP. Many companies, moved during the pandemic. I think hosted VoIP should have been a really good investment area for most people because that took off like wildfire.
Yep.
Everybody replacing their servers or at least temporarily using it. What are the biggest security concerns, I guess, about that? And then are there certain applications you think that after the pandemic will go back to being more on-site?
I think that I'll answer them in reverse order. From my perspective, there's always going to be those applications that lend themselves to being on-prem. There's some proprietary industry-specific application that you just can't figure out how to put into a SaaS or a cloud app. And I think that list has shortened dramatically over the past, 5 years or so. But look, there's still going to be those type of applications where you do need to run it on a server in an office. As it relates to security concerns, digital transformation, I think a lot of it is, you look at your data and you start there. Where is my confidential data? Where am I putting it? What type of restrictions do these cloud vendors or security SOC controls, to nerd out on compliance a little bit and controls, do they put in place? And it's just understanding, and the MSPs, this is why SMB should use MSPs, right? They understand kind of what to look for, what that checklist is on the security side, and where the data is going for these SMBs. And so for me, a lot of it is you go through your security controls based on where the data is located and make sure that we've got it covered. We'll talk in a little bit too about, how do you protect users and accessing that data, regardless of where it's located. But for me, it's always like, follow the data. Where's it's our most important asset, and where are you putting it? And then we got to look at the security controls around that.
I'd never heard of, a lot of the security concerns around hosted VoIP until during the pandemic. But to that point there's a lot of things that could be shared through those platforms today. Unified communications is collecting a lot of stuff. So if it's not secured, and I think most of the end users wouldn't be aware of those things, but MSPs have to understand the concerns and be able to address those concerns.
Yeah, I mean, the implications of it too is there's no more leaning to the cube next to you and saying something, right? The only way to now say that is in a digital,
nobody over there. Yeah.
Right? This digital form, and the minute that it became digital, it was recorded, it was transcribed, it's just a different world.
On the BYOD side, I know there used to be a ton of discussion about this. Is it still a big concern? Because I know most of the MSPs I talk about, when they see those implications, they try to basically eliminate them wherever possible. Wasn't always possible at the beginning of the pandemic because a lot of equipment shortages and supply chain was awful, I know, but have they solved a lot of those issues since last March?
Solved or worked through, and I think there's two different ways of looking at that. Solved it, I don't necessarily know. Worked through it, I would say absolutely they had to. And so you see really two ways, right? They either went totally, you can only access the network on a company-owned asset, and it is going to be a managed asset, and that is it. And if your asset breaks, I will ship you a new computer. And I think the other way it went was, connect from anywhere. We're just going to figure out what security software or protocols, procedures, network access controls need to be put in place for you to use your personal device, and that'll be okay. And we'll make sure that you as a user are identified. So I think there was two paths that businesses went. And I guess if it is a company-owned asset, that's not technically BYOD. But again, that's how they addressed it, right? It was too big of a risk for for an organization, and they decided it was less expensive and less risk to issue a device.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I guess in many cases, even, they may have considered company-owned assets to be BYOD because they weren't configured to take home and to use on a home network and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and to play with their home gaming system with.
Yeah, it's a very good point. A very good point.
I hadn't even thought about that part, but no, I think that's a critical part. Now, the email part is the other aspect that you mentioned. Are there some additional things that need to take place with email today if you're an MSP?
I think there are. It's such a and again, these metrics are easy to define as statistics, right? You do media, I do the podcast, and folks, like, we have all these statistics. Most of the threats are coming in via email, right? It's a user innocently clicking a link for Valentine's flowers or St. Patrick's Day something, right? The scammers or the hackers have gotten incredibly good at getting someone to click. And it's about wiring money or tricking the administrative assistant to do something. But even now, it's more about account takeover and just getting access to the network. And just watching and waiting for that right opportunity. So MSPs, there's a ton of solutions. Obviously, I'm Barracuda, right? So there's no one that has a better email security platform. Call us, we'll help. But if you aren't looking at, or you don't have email security and you're an MSP, it's something that you should be looking at. Even if you're on Office 365, putting security solutions, gateway solutions in front of Office 365, and even API based. A lot of the gateway solutions can get rid of the malware and some of the viruses and that type of stuff that we're all used to talking about. But a lot of the phishing attempts and account takeover attempts nowadays, it's more advanced. It needs to be like an API delivered solution where the security solution is actually looking at the APIs of these mail providers, Microsoft being the most common right now, right? And it's looking for those threats, and you're using artificial intelligence, machine learning based on how that organization is leveraging the platform to detect threats of, oh, Brian never checks email at 1:30 in the morning. Why is Brian checking email at 1:30 in the morning? And why is he emailing Neal? He never, he doesn't email Neal at 1:30 in the morning, right? And so there's these
always
different
email Neal at 1:30.
Exactly. So there's these different opportunities that exists for MSPs to kind of help the businesses that they support. And a lot of solutions now too, and I see coming on the email thread is, you can even do incident response and forensically get in there and fix problems that have happened. Look, threats are going to happen. You might have one user that did fall susceptible and something got through the defenses. Well, now the solutions exist, Barracuda included, where you can now take that threat and then take a look through everyone else's mailbox and make sure that threat doesn't exist and get rid of it, remediate it, right? And so the solutions, yes, over the last 12 months, but even email is, you have to, my personal opinion is, I talk myself into this on the podcast, is if you're an MSP, you got to have an email security solution because it protects, a lot of the vulnerabilities that are affecting businesses today.
Yeah, it kind of goes counter to, I think, some of the platforms too, whether it's, Microsoft or Google is I know they pitch that it's got the security built in, but most MSPs, I think, are fully aware of the point that that's not good enough. It goes back to the, good, better, best. You need to have best these days when it comes to that basic standard stuff doesn't necessarily protect you.
Also, unified stack, right? We've talked about this for years, having the same stack where it's more about configuration, where you can train your MSP's employees to know how to operate the solution, how to configure the solution. And so having all your customers behind that same security solution is valuable even from that perspective.
Right. Well, and I think that's the good and the bad. Sometimes it's good on the security side, but if you're standardizing on like Office 365, and a lot of MSPs do, it works. It's a good platform. Google's a good platform, but you need to have the other aspects on it. The downside is when it goes down, all of it goes down.
It goes down.
So there's other problems with that, but for the most part, you're going to have uptime with these systems, and and you can save a lot of time by setting up certain configurations that are the same and certain tools that are the same. But that's the critical part. It's hard. The hardest part, I think, is finding a good balance between ease of use for the end users and control as far as the security.
Yeah, no, that's totally true, right? I mean, it goes back to the users, how do we train the users to do the right thing, but how do we make it easy for them to do the right thing? And if you don't make it easy, like the security really shouldn't hinder them doing their job. And the minute that it does, they'll find a way around around the security solution, rendering, everything that you've put in place useless.
Well, and you've seen these spam coming in. The phishing schemes are getting so good. I mean, every
Yeah.
time I get one, I'm looking. It comes from my bank, and everybody has like one big bank that they work with, whether it's credit card or loans of some sort. When it comes in, you have to double, triple check it sometimes. But at the same point, I don't click on it. I actually go, like most people, I've been trained by MSPs to go to the actual website and pull up my account and look at it.
Yep. Don't click the link.
But man, they are so good. They should be doing marketing for some of the other companies out here too.
Yeah.
But that's the hard part. It's getting harder, but just those best practices, getting that through it can be the difficult step because people are people and you don't know if they're always listening to things. So one of the things, I know VPN has been the go-to technology for remote access. If I go back, wind the clock back a year ago, VPN was got to have that in place. Send everybody home with that. That's like the perfect fix to get people started. But why is that an issue now?
I think VPNs have existed for years, right? We've all
Right.
used VPNs, and when most of the MSPs, at least the ones that I would talk to, would install VPN, it was for the business owner or the one person that worked remote, right? So the network gear that was installed and the security privileges that were set up supported that one or two users that were going to work remotely. The bandwidth that they had maybe at that remote office supported those one or two users remote plus everyone that was in the office. Well, then, everybody goes remote, and depending how the VPNs are configured, you've essentially now just added 30 households to the local network. You've got everyone's bandwidth running through that perimeter device, which may or may not be able to handle it. Same thing with the bandwidth. And so, we've seen MSPs, and we've heard the stories of MSPs where, you had a customer where it was BYOD, they couldn't verify. They didn't have any software or MDM software checking the device. They VPN'd in, and effectively, it started to do bad things on the network, right? Because the security that they had around that device connecting in, and the security that they had on the device, once it's authenticated, once the user is authenticated to the local device or the local network, they're trusted. And so it allowed them to do certain things that they maybe shouldn't have been allowed to do. So, this is one of those, in my mind, digital transformation items where enterprise technologies for the last decades, it takes 5 or 10 years, and it comes down to SMB as it commoditizes, the price point lowers. This, in my mind, is accelerated the concept of, zero trust type solutions, which, 18 months ago were mentioned in the security community at CompTIA, right? We would talk about it at the executive council, but now, you're starting to see more and more of these solutions come out and come down to the SMB, and it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, Barracuda, we'll talk about it. Barracuda's bought one, but how this kind of evolves, the concept of remote work 6 to 12 months from now, as all of this is accelerated and caused MSPs to have to think and set up their customers' networks a different way. So I'm excited for the new technology, the new way of doing things, the secure way of doing things with zero trust. But I think that VPNs had their time. They're still useful in very certain circumstances if you can do it, but there's a better way.
No, we evolve. That's the great part
Yeah.
about technology, because then there's new solutions to be able to sell and to train customers on, and yeah, it's great. So aside from VPNs, what other remote security options should MSPs not just be offering, but really be suggesting strongly that their clients use?
Yeah. So there's a whole concept of zero trust network access, and so this is just, it's a buzzword. You can Google it. It reminds me back in the day of a combination of a NAC solution, which was network access control on the network, right? Someone plugged a rogue device in, it would just shut it down. Like it just wouldn't do anything, welcome circa 1990 something. And so nowadays, how do you have, it's almost like a firewall's default deny, right? We're going to deny everything until we allow it. And so with users connecting from anywhere, how do you make sure that they have access only to what they should have access to, and they can connect anywhere? And you're always verifying they are who they are, and then you're allowing them access, versus they authenticate once and then you trust them forever. And so with the zero trust type of a setup, it allows an administrator to do those type of configurations, right? Here's the applications that Brian should have access to. Maybe here's the times you should have access to it. Oh, and by the way, he can only connect from a device that has antivirus, has the latest patches, has certain things set up. And so you're starting to see some of the zero trust and the MDM almost merge. Merge is probably the wrong word, but this is how you're starting to see and guarantee that there's a certain security posture on a BYOD device. And then there's a certain thing that the user knows and has, right? Two-factor authentication that then allows them access to an infrastructure or a company database or application wherever they're located and wherever that's located, and it's seamless to the user. They don't need some heavy VPN client that's connecting in. They don't get access to everything. It allows them to get very pointed, very secure access to just what they need.
So there's standard requirements with it. There's basically like keys. You have keys to certain doors and not other doors. And it's kind of like the old physical office spaces. There's places you can go and you can get in the front door, but you can't go in all of the other spaces. So
yeah, and I think from if you look at some of the stuff that's come out, Microsoft has published, how to implement a zero trust architecture. And then there's various other organizations that have issued them. NIST has done it. Look, as I always say, you go to these podcasts, you're not going to learn everything, but you're going to get that nugget. You're going to get that idea. It's worth spending some time researching how to implement kind of a zero trust architecture or thought process, and then apply that to the networks that as an MSP you support. What are those changes or that may occur, or what are those things that can be done differently to make the networks more secure? Look, I mean, we've been designing networks for years, but there are some subtle things that are in these different architectures that are kind of changing how people think about setting them up.
very good. And I know that, our listeners and those that are watching the video side too, they can go to the IOTA website, which by the way is brand new as of this week. So be sure to check that out. But they can look at the resource page, and Barracuda MSP is there to learn more about Barracuda. But what are some other places they can learn about the Cloud Gen and some of the other products that you have right now?
Yeah, they can always point their favorite web browser to barracuda.com or barracudamsp.com for MSP specific stuff. But and other great places are always obviously the Barracuda blog, where we we tie it all together with what's happening in industry with some of the technology solutions. But they can always point their favorite browser to barracuda.com.
Only their favorite browser.
Only their favorite browser. Because I guarantee you, everyone on this call has at least 2 or 3 browsers, probably 3 browsers installed. So I don't want to name one, right? Because you might have a different favorite than me, Brian. And so you just open that one that you like and make it happen.
I like the one that works. That's pretty much it. No, that's fine. So Neal, time always flies fast when we're chatting. So it's fantastic having you today. But do you have any final parting words before we close the session today?
I mean, sure. I always love giving free advice and parting knowledge, but from my perspective, MSPs really need to practice what they preach. And you can go to all these webinars, you can do everything on security, but just make sure you have your own house in order, especially with having the keys to the kingdom to as many businesses as a lot of MSPs do. There's so many resources from vendors or your peers or colleagues that can help you along the way. I'm a big fan of CompTIA, been involved with CompTIA many years. There's resources there. So, if you need to, raise your hand. IOTA as well, which I should mention first, but I will mention it last so it sticks in all of your head. IOTA also has great resources to help as well. And from my perspective, ask for help. right? Not every MSP needs dedicated staff, but you need some place to go or a dedicated team that can help you get there from a security perspective. At the same time, I think now is the time where customers are understanding, and what I mean by customers is MSPs customers are understanding they need to upgrade their security posture. So if you're not having those conversations with your customers, I can guarantee you that somebody else is. So, make sure that you have those conversations with customers, address their concerns to upgrade their security posture. So I think those are my two parting words or thoughts there, Brian.
Those are great words to leave us with today. So thank you. On behalf of IOTA, I'd like to thank Neal Bradbury of Barracuda MSP for joining us today and sharing his insight on the remote work shift and cybersecurity concerns. Before we sign off, I ask you to take a moment and check out our innovative new website, which I mentioned earlier, has a wealth of cybersecurity resources created specifically for MSPs and MSSPs. Give it a test drive at iota.com. Thanks again for joining us, and have a safe and secure day.